Hello, candidates. My name is Michael Koss, and I am one of the founders and directors of the Placing Company. And I would like to welcome you to Module 1 of Australian Workplace Readiness Training, focusing on pre-departure and arrival information. So, firstly, before we get stuck in, why are we doing this training? I know a lot of you are thinking that we're going to be going over a few basic things, which I'm sure you would already be aware of. Um, but really, the purpose of this series is to properly get you ready for coming to Australia and what working is going to be like here. Australia has a number of nuances which are unique to this country, be it in its laws, be it in its arrival policies, how living here actually works. And we are taking you through that process. Part of the of that is the HR departments at the employers really appreciate this. They want to know that you've had exposure to this information, that you have digested it, listened to it, and we are giving you that baseline of knowledge about what life is like in Australia. So, with that said, today's focus is really fun. We're getting started with the good things. Um, this is all about getting you ready for when it comes time to travel to Australia, what the journey is going to be like, things that you should be aware of, and then once you arrive, what's going to happen and how we get you set up in the country. And then also, we're going to cover a few of the laws around Australia and safety tips when it comes to tourism, because ultimately we want you to be safe. So, this is a very foundational module. You will receive a questionnaire after this module as well, and you'll have 2 weeks to complete it. The following module is happening in 2 weeks' time. So we're going to keep this nice and regular for you guys. And also, the employers are very aware of what content we are delivering here. And a lot of it is being requested by them. So sit back. This will probably take about 45 minutes. And if you do have any questions afterwards, please write into the team. We're all available. So, just a little graphic here to pay attention with a very serious looking koala. So, pre departure and coming to Australia. There are a couple of things that we really should be mindful of before you get on the plane. Number one is your passport should have a minimum of 6 months validity before getting on the aircraft. The more, the better, really. If you're able to have a passport which has a lot more time on it, that's awesome, because it'll make your life easier. You won't have to renew it with the embassy when you're in Australia. But in order to board the aircraft, a minimum of 6 months validity will be required. So don't get turned away at the airport. This is actually quite common, that people don't realize that that is a requirement. When it comes to your flights and travel to Australia, we'll be working with you on an individual basis for that. If you're coming from the Philippines, there is a possibility you'll come on a direct flight into Brisbane, Melbourne, or Sydney. If you're coming from Nepal, absolutely you're going to be transiting. If you're coming from the Middle East or Europe, there's a possibility you'll be on direct flight and possibility you'll be on transit flight. Every nationality and each country has different transit requirements, so we'll be going over that with you once your ticket is locked in to come down to Australia and we know which port you'll be flying into. When it comes to traveling with partners or dependents as well, that's something that we can discuss close to the time as well, when we know where and when you're flying. Price of flights does fluctuate pretty significantly coming into Australia, especially around school holiday periods. And so we will just work with you to make sure that we're getting really good, comfortable flights, and also that you're aware of the baggage allowances when coming into the country. Now, this takes us on to our next point. So Australia has a bit of a unique arrival procedure. It's most similar to New Zealand, but it's quite different to many other countries. This is largely because Australia is an island, and our plant life, our flora, our fauna, our animals are all very vulnerable to outside influences, be it plants from other countries, uh, bugs from other countries, could be anything. So essentially, when you arrive into Australia on the plane, you're going to be given this form. Every person must have a completed form. So if you're traveling with children, they need a completed form. If you're yourself coming, you need a completed form. Any Australian coming needs a completed form, and this is a legal document. So in your declarations, essentially, you are making a legal statement to the government of Australia when you go through customs that you are not carrying any of these things that are listed on this form. So what will happen once you arrive in the country, plane will land, you'll get off the plane. Firstly, you'll go to immigration. You will line up at the in-person counters. That's where your visa will be activated. So you'll hand them your boarding pass, your visa documents, your passport, as well as this card. They will then stamp it, hand it back to you, and then you proceed to the baggage claim at whichever airport you're at. Now, there are a couple of key points here. Whether you are connecting to a domestic flight or not, you must collect your bags when you land in Australia and pass through customs and then check in for your domestic flight. There is no through connection of bags in Australia when international flights come into the country because of this form. You are essentially taking your bags with you, handing this form to the customs officer. They'll have a look. If you are declaring anything, that is totally fine. So a declaration here is saying, I have these products. I have meat products. I might have some seafood, some vegetables, some fruit, some nuts, grains, whatever it is. You essentially get amnesty here. So the customs official will then go with you. You'll open the bags and they will assess whether or not you're allowed to bring it into the country. If you're not allowed to bring it in, unfortunately, it will be kept at customs. If you are allowed to bring it in, they've assessed the risk is low or the product is safe. Fantastic, you'll bring it into Australia. The trouble is, if you get to that point where you're giving the customs agent the form and you've ticked no on something that you do have in your bag and you are pulled aside for a screening, which happens very, very often. I reckon they've got 50+% of people at the moment being screened. Happens to me very often. Essentially, you just go open your bags and they make sure that what you said on the form is correct. If that happens and you have marked no on something that you are actually carrying, then it is an offense. You're liable to get a fine. And depending on what you're carrying, they could even cancel your visa. So please take this seriously. This is literally why we're doing this training, because this happens to people every single day in Australia. We have a whole TV show about it. It's very entertaining too, but it is also serious. And you'll see on the aircraft as well, you will not be able to forget about this because before arriving, every single international flight must play a video from the Customs Authority in Australia describing all of these obligations that I'm just telling you about now. So please have that in mind when you are packing. If you have any questions during that process, please ask me. But when in doubt, if you are on the plane flying in, just tick yes, let the customs agent know what you have, and they will either say you can keep it or not keep it. That's the easiest way about going through things. Now, once you arrive in the country, for the most part, there will be someone from the placing company to meet and greet you, or your employer will be there. We essentially want you walking out of those arrival doors into Australia to one of us. Connectivity to home is really important. We want you to make sure that everyone back at home knows that you've landed safely. So all the airports are Wi-Fi enabled, but also we'll be waiting there for you with the SIM card, and that can get you started. So you've got your data connection so you can get in touch with everyone at home. And then we will take you to, or your employer, to the town or location where you'll be working from. So what will generally happen that day is there'll be a bit of jet lag, get a bit familiar with where you'll be staying. The next day, We will take you to go and open a bank account at one of the large banks in Australia. That way, it will make filling in your employment forms just way, way easier. So we'll go get that sorted out with you. Number two, what we'll do is organize your tax file number. A tax file number, you probably have something similar in your own countries too, is just a number that attaches to all employment forms. It's like a social security number in America as well, and it tracks all of the income and things that you have. In Australia, when it comes to taxation, there are a bunch of tests essentially which dictate whether or not you'll be paying tax in Australia. The one which is probably most relevant to you guys is the 183-day test. If you are working in Australia for 183 days out of a year, then you are liable to pay tax in Australia. What having a tax file number does for you is, firstly, lowers the tax rate that you're going to otherwise have. You do get penalized if you don't have one. And also, then you're able to do all your filings, stay above board. And the way things work in Australia is your employer will pay the taxation contribution for you each month out of your salary, and then you claim it back at the end of the financial year if there's any overpay. And so our financial year in Australia goes from the 1st of July until the 31st of June, and then processing happens from July, August, September for any tax refunds. So we'll help you out with all of that, but the most important thing is on arrival, getting you set up with your bank account and your tax file number, so then you can start working essentially. Now, day-to-day life in Australia, what we'll be doing with you then, once that admin's taken care of, is we will be going together to a supermarket. In Australia, we've got two really big brands, Coles and Woolworths, and then a few smaller big brands like Aldi and IGA. Australia is really a very supermarket-heavy culture. You would be hard-pressed to find a town or city around the place which doesn't have an abundance of supermarkets. The quality of the produce is fantastic. The meats are wonderful. The vegetables are fresh. The breads are artisan. There is a ton to buy from. And also because Australians, we have a very multicultural society, you'll find there is a lot of diversity in the foods available in the supermarket too. So we do have local markets, but they might happen once a week, twice a week, depending on your location. The supermarket is just a staple part of Australian life. So we'll take you to one of those as well, get you set up with some groceries and help you familiarize yourself with how things work here in Australia on day-to-day living. The next point I want to cover is transportation. Across Australia, there is an abundance of public transportation available and at really, really low prices. So let's say you're working in a regional area in the state of Victoria, where I am, where Melbourne is the capital city. The most you will pay for a public transport ticket on the train or on the bus to the furthest most reaches of our state is $10.60 Australian. The government is doing a sponsorship program where they're making the price capped. So it makes it easier to move in and out of the city as you please. So it's really easy to come to Melbourne for a weekend or go exploring other parts of the state as well. And between our trains and our buses, everywhere is covered, really. And that occurs nationally too. So you'll find moving around Australia is really easy, and the cities are incredibly well connected. Trains, buses, trams, the works. You won't have any problem getting anywhere you need to go. If you do need any help, though, definitely ask us. The next point to cover is pharmaceuticals. In Australia, any medications will require a prescription from a doctor. Your prescription from home will be valid initially, and you should have a prescription for any medications that you're bringing into the country as well, and carry that with you. What I would advise is before leaving home, get a fresh prescription from your doctor with all the various medications you take or are bringing, just so you have that available. We have a great pharmacy culture in Australia. The pharmacies are huge and very much readily available, but they also do follow the processes very strictly. So my advice is get that script before traveling, and also bring a bit of your medications with you to get yourself set up. And once you're here, you'll find there's a local pharmacy who you'll be able to make a relationship with very, very quickly and easily. Okay, the next point is driving in Australia. And I've had a few candidates already get in touch with me about this point. The rules around recognition of your home license vary state to state. Generally, at the very least, you'll be able to get started with driving on your international license, but also you might be able to just keep that the entire time you're here. Your international license will dictate the conditions upon which you're allowed to drive in Australia. So if you have a manual license from home for a manual car, then in Australia you're allowed to drive manual cars and automatic cars. If you have an automatic license only, then only in Australia can you drive automatic cars. So long as your license is printed in English, you should be pretty okay getting a reciprocal license from the road authority, depending which state that you're in, and we will help you with that. But if you can, before departure, get yourself an international license, and that does make the process a bit easier. So a couple of road safety rules when it comes to driving in Australia, which can be a bit different to at home. Number one is seatbelts. Seatbelts are mandatory for every passenger who is in a moving vehicle or car. Essentially, if you are sitting in the rear seat of a car just as a passenger, you must be wearing your seatbelt. If you have a child who is in the car, they must be wearing a seatbelt. If you're in the front seat as a passenger, you must be wearing a seatbelt. If you're the driver, you must be wearing a seatbelt. In the event someone is not wearing a seatbelt and they are pulled over by the police, both the driver and that passenger will receive a fine. That's how seriously Australia takes seatbelt laws. We have very big cars here. The maximum cars sold are large SUVs. We drive particularly fast, and we have pretty big roads. And so this is a matter of important safety, and the law is just very clear on it. So please don't mess around with it. Next one is drinking and driving. In Australia, just as a blanket rule, you shouldn't. If you are going to go out and have a fun night, organize someone to drive who won't drink. If you do end up drinking and driving, the legal limit is 0.05 blood alcohol level. There are random police stops all the time, booze buses, the works here. They're really very vigilant on this. If you are over 0.05, you are at risk of losing your license, and also you may lose your visa to work in Australia because it would amount to an offence. So just please be aware of that. It's not worth the risk. Take care of yourself, take care of your friends. And if you are going to go out and drink, organise alternative arrangements. There are taxis, public transport available, Ubers, everything else, as well as friends. Just be smart when it comes to those sorts of activities. Now, going out, Australia, it's going out and being social is a huge part of the culture. And it's expected that whatever community you are living in, working in, you'll be going out for dinners, you might go to the pub, you might go out partying on the weekend. You know, every option under the sun is available. It is a really fun country, but also it's a very safe country. It's a country where we like to keep things pretty low key, not cause any stresses, and no big incidents. And so when it comes to drinking alcohol, just be responsible. You are out as a reflection of your employer as well when you're going out partying, especially in regional areas. Everyone knows each other. Everyone knows who you're working for and all those sorts of things. And if you're in caregiving, for instance, you'll be taking care of the parents of some of the people in local community. It's always important to maintain your dignity in those situations and not put yourself in a situation where they might feel a bit uncomfortable with you taking care of their parents or something along those lines. So if you are drinking alcohol, have a fun time, enjoy it, but just not to excess. In Australia, unlike places like America, Thailand, Netherlands, drugs continue to be illegal here, including the use of marijuana. cocaine, all those other nasties. They do happen in society, but they are illegal. The police do drug tests and pull over cars for drug testing as well. Because you guys are here on a visa, please be cautious. It's just not worth the risk in losing your visa or damaging your own reputations. So I would highly recommend following the law here and not utilizing any illicit substances. And then the other big one that I want to mention on the night out is Australia really is, like I said before, a very peaceful place, and violence is something which just isn't tolerated. If you do witness someone being assaulted, which is very rare, please don't hesitate to call the police. And for yourselves as well, Australians are not very big on touching people outside their close circle. So just be wary that unless the social cues are there and there's been consent, touching one another is something we're a little bit delicate with. But yeah, if you do witness anything that seems out of the ordinary and looks a bit violent, then absolutely report it and help that person out. Okay. The next one, sorry guys, it's a little bit serious at the moment, but these are important things for us to run through to make sure that you guys are safe when you're here. You know what to do, you know what to expect. And as you would well know, Australia is famous for its beaches. 93% of Australians live within 8 kilometers of a beach. It is a huge part of our lifestyle here and one of the big attractions to coming to this country. One of the biggest issues that happens, though, is when people come to Australia, they might not be familiar with the surf conditions and the risks involved with playing at our beaches. And so we have an incredible lifeguarding culture here. Our lifeguards are absolutely magnificent. Many of them are volunteers, and they patrol the beaches all across the country. The rule that you should follow is swim between the flags. As Australians, that's what we're brought up understanding, and that's what we do at all the beaches. If you go to a deserted beach, it's probably better you just stay away from the water, even if the water looks calm. You never know what's happening in terms of currents and riptides and those sorts of things. When you're swimming between the flags, and the flags you can see on the screen now, those areas are patrolled and protected by the lifeguards. They are always watching that water. And that is absolutely the safest way to swim in Australia. And you'll find no shortage of these flags around. Usually it demarcates about a 20-meter area where you can swim, play in the surf. And don't get me wrong, the waves can definitely still be very big there too. But then it keeps all of the riptides outside the flag area. Also, surfers stay outside the flag area, and then as well, motorized water sports stay outside the flag area. So it's a really safe place to be able to swim. Each time you do go to the beach, do check the local conditions. If you have any questions at all, just ask the lifeguard. They are so nice, and they really would rather you ask a question and let them know as well if you might be have limited swimming experience or something like that. Just let them know and they'll keep an extra eye on you. That makes their job so much easier because they know to be there for you. Animal safety. Okay, yes, this is a big one. Australia is very famous for our various animals. So, yeah, up north in Australia, we do have crocodiles. There are lots of signs around in areas where there might be a crocodile. So that's up around the Great Barrier Reef, around the Northern Territory and Northern Western Australia. You might end up there on a vacation. You might end up working in that area. Encounters with people or attacks are very, very rare. But it is just worthwhile following the signs, asking any locals questions as you may need. I did used to work in the Northern Territory, and there was an instance where I was walking on the beach and I turned around and I saw about 10 meters behind me, 3 meters offshore, there was a pretty large crocodile. Came up very, very silently. These things happen, and that's just part of living in this country. And for the most part, they're not going to come near you. And you can go on some really, really cool tours up around the Great Barrier Reef, where you can go see the crocodiles, and same around Darwin and the Northern Territory. Um, and the guides will, yeah, help you out in seeing some of the cool things there. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's just something to be aware of, that when you are up north, that is something you might have to deal with. Dingoes, we don't really see them that much. There are instances where if you're out camping, you might come across one or two or something like that, but it's pretty rare. I know it's one of the famous international stories, dingo ate my baby, those sorts of things. Um, it's just not a very common thing to see in Australia. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Um, Sharks, yes, we do have sharks in Australia. Down south around Adelaide, the bottom of the country in the colder waters, we have great white sharks. Up north, we have everything from bull sharks, hammerhead sharks, tiger sharks, you name it, it's there. Um, my sister and her husband actually were just snorkeling on the Barrier Reef yesterday, and they jumped in the water, and right beneath them was a reef shark. So played around with that for a while. For the most part, interactions with humans are very, very rare. All the more reason, though, when you are at the beaches, just swim between the flags, stay in the patrolled areas. The lifeguards are always on watch to keep you safe in a variety of circumstances. Um, Snakes. In Australia, we have about 140 different species of snakes. And I believe we have 8 of the top 10 most venomous snakes. The most common ones around would probably be up north around Queensland. There are pythons and stuff like that. In New South Wales and Victoria country, black snakes, brown snakes, those sorts of things. You would rarely find them in the metro areas and in the downtown areas of towns. They tend to keep to the forests. But when you are out going bushwalking or hiking or exploring a bit, just be aware that they could be around. Um, Generally, they keep to themselves. They hear your footprints, your footsteps coming, and they'll move away. But if you do have an interaction with them, the general protocol is just kind of stay still, let them pass, or keep on going with their business, and they'll move along quite quickly. Um, they're not looking to get into any altercation with you. I had a friend a couple of weeks ago. She was doing some trail running outside Melbourne, and she saw a snake, tried to avoid it, tripped, fell right next to the snake, and the snake just went along with its business. They're definitely not there to find you, so just be aware that they're out there, and tread lightly if you are in a bushwalky, hikey sort of area. Spiders, yes, we have them. And also, they are very vulnerable to cans of bug spray and raid, just like anywhere else in the world. So please have that confidence that you won't really have to deal with them much. And again, they keep to themselves. They're not looking to hang out inside the house because they know they're going to get squished. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. And then a couple of our big famous animals, the kangaroos. As you would have seen, a lot of you from my posts on our various groups, they are around. It is very, very easy to come across kangaroos in the wild. They are just part of Australian life, really, except for like in the center of the city. As soon as you go out of the city, they're around. So, number one, there's something to be really cautious of when you're driving, especially at dawn and dusk. They could definitely be around. So, keep an eye out, drive safely, and usually in regional areas and rural areas, we'll drive with our headlights on just as a way to hopefully let them see us because they're quite big. If you do see them in the wild, just keep your distance a bit. They do get quite big. Some of them 180 centimeters, 200 centimeters tall when they stand up. They're great to watch. Usually, they'll keep to themselves and they'll travel around in packs, and you can see them running around. And yeah, just let them go about their business. Koalas are a bit harder to find, but you will see driving around a lot of road signs warning you that koalas could be crossing the road. They look very cute and cuddly, but they've actually got some really big claws. So if you are going to hold them, I recommend doing it at a zoo where they do keep the claws a bit trimmed rather than the wild. So you'll come across a fair few animals in Australia. It's pretty cool. Okay. Now, emergency services. This one's really important, well, as the entire course is, but this is something that'll be really useful for you. So in Australia, police, ambulance, and fire services are all connected to the 000 service. If you are facing an emergency, call 000 and a dispatcher will pick up the call. They are incredibly well trained and they will direct your call to the service that is required. And it all happens within moments. It is an incredibly sophisticated system. And yeah, be it an ambulance, fire, police, generally as well for particular medical emergencies, all three will be dispatched. So someone can arrive first. The fire engines and the police are also trained in pretty advanced first aid. And then also we have series of specialist ambulances for cardiac events called MICA ambulances, and there is a whole network that happens. But that is your number one point of call. If you hit any trouble or you need help in an emergency, your first call is 000. Everything else can wait. Get yourself out of trouble first. Number two, the placing company. We are there for you 24/7. If you are feeling any sort of homesickness or frustration at work or a bit lonely or anything, give us a call. We are there. We're with you guys for the next 4 years on so many fronts. And so please don't hesitate to give us a call at any time. You've got our details already if you're watching this video. And so please use it. Please use the group as well. We've really got an amazing community coming together from many parts of the world. So do take advantage of that. Your embassy is another important contact that we are also in touch with in Australia. So I was actually just at the Philippines embassy this week. We're keeping everyone nice and up to date as well with what we're doing, who we're doing it with, and we want to make sure that your connection to home is always there. With regards to the embassy as well, just for our Filipino candidates, we have verified with them which documents you'll need to carry in case you do go home for a visit, just so you can get your OEC really easily to leave the country again. And they said that can happen within a day. So we will be organizing that document pack for you as well. So you've got it with you. Your passport stays with you always as well. And you can kind of come and go as you please, depending on what you agree with your employer for leave. Something I did want to cover, two things actually when it comes to emergency services. Number one, in Australia, we are a really safe country. It is meant to be very comfortable here, live in a lot of security. And for that reason, in the 1990s, guns were banned in Australia. You will find only on farms in a very limited set of circumstances are people allowed to have a firearm, and then the police, and that is it. It is a country where, unlike America, you don't necessarily have to worry about someone having a gun or anything along those lines. It is very, very difficult to get one in this country. And so you shouldn't really have any exposure to that here. That is something that Australia takes with a lot of pride, to be honest, as well, having a non-gun culture. And then the next one is bushfires. So bushfires are a very regular part of Australian life. For our native vegetation, actually a lot of them require fire in order to gestate. And so it's just part and parcel of living in Australia. Our last big fire season was 2019, started in about September, October, continued through the summer. We do get pretty heavy, dry climates here, and a lightning strike could then cause that area just to flare up pretty quickly. Our emergency services are incredible when it comes to fire prevention. All year round, they're working on backburning water reserves. We've got fleets of aircraft that are dedicated as well to putting out fires, and the machine around fire safety is very, very smooth. If there is any sort of fire danger for a town or area that you're working in, if you're working in a regional area in particular, you will be receiving so much advance notice about it. Nothing happens quickly when it comes to the fire side of things. They really get on the front foot. If there are dangers, SMSs come, There are daily updates in town on the radio. We've got before you drive into each town, fire risk warnings. They're like green, orange, dark orange, red. Um, we have total fire bans that are also announced, where you can't barbecue or light anything as well. You will be very well informed if there is anything happening. And we'll also be in touch with you. So please don't be concerned about it. It's part of life here. And they really do take incredible care. Now, with all of that out of the way, coming to Australia is really meant to be a lot of fun. This is the party island. The British kicked out a whole lot of people who were meant to be criminals and they set up Australia. And Australia is all about working to live, not living to work. And so your shifts, which we'll go over on the next module, are going to be very structured around that. You are meant to have a lot of free time. You're meant to go out in the sun and have fun. So the pictures that you see here on the left, there's the some of the outback. In the middle, that's Sydney Harbour. On the far right, that's the Gold Coast in Queensland. It's about an hour south of Brisbane. It's a fantastic place to visit. You're going to have weekends, you're going to have days off, you have annual leave, all these sorts of things. Your employers are really supportive of you going out and exploring and enjoying Australia because also they want you to stay. This isn't a short-term investment from their side. They want you guys to be around for a long time, to be really happy. And part of that is experiencing what this country has to offer. So here's a few more of our sites. So we have ski fields in New South Wales and Victoria. I'm up there fairly often if any of you have an interest in skiing. Down the 12 Apostles, so just outside of Melbourne, there's this beautiful drive called the Great Ocean Road, completely worth doing. And then the Great Barrier Reef is the picture on the right and is very, very worth flying up there, get out on the reef and go check out some of the different colored corals, the fish. It's just an incredible experience. Last time I was up there, they do have a dwarf minke whale migration that happens in June till September each year. And we had this whole pod of whales come up from under us when we were snorkeling, which was really, really cool. And then also sports. With our climate here, Australia is just made for being outdoors. And what you'll find is among your workplace and areas that you're living in, sports is just really part of the culture and it's a great way to be social. So if you're interested, 100% advise you to get involved. It's really worthwhile when you're here as well, checking out an Australian rules football game. We have the rugby on, we've got soccer leagues, the cricket is really famous too. But there is literally everything under the sun that you could do. If there are certain things you would like to try out or teams you'd like to join, let us know and we'll see what we can hunt down for you. In Australia, food culture is very, very big. Pretty much every cafe will have avocado on toast. Everyone has their favorite coffee place. We take coffee about as seriously as the Italians, and then lots of baked goods and things like that. But you'll find here tons of Nepali restaurants, lots of Vietnamese, Thai, Filipino, Chinese, Japanese, Indonesian, Sri Lankan, Middle Eastern, you name it. We have a very multicultural society in Australia, and our food definitely reflects that. So whether it's cooking or going out, even in small towns, you're going to find pretty much every cuisine under the sun available for you to enjoy. So that is it. That is the first introduction. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what to expect when you come here. There is the assessment module, which is being sent around at the moment. Please complete that, send it in, and then we have module 2 coming up very soon. So thank you all very, very much for joining in, and do let me know if you have any questions. And thanks from the Placing Company.